Health Academy. Listen up and you will see how to stay or get healthy naturally. Optimize your life and learn in a fun way. Nutrition, health, hormones taught easily. No matter where you are, from anywhere on earth, no matter who you are, you certainly deserve Beyond the Basics Health Academy. A fun way to learn and be healthy.
Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome to podcast number 78. 78 already. I can't even believe it. I forgot. I was so excited.
Seems like just yesterday we were at 77. It's just
I'm so excited about 78, Megan. I can't even remember what am I going to call this? I was going to say, better living through chemistry ?
Yes, we're actually going to take a dive into the other world tonight and talk about a very specific...
The dark side.
Well, we don't think of it as the dark side. We think of both sides as just the other side.
The other side of the fence. So, hey, who are you?
I am Dr. Meaghan Kirschling, nurse practitioner and chiropractor.
Acupuncturist extraordinaire.
My master's of nutrition, I have a master's of nutrition, and I am also a registered nurse. I think that's it.
And I'm just plain old...
chameleon.
And I'm just plain old Wendy Boerhauer.
I get to talk about, with the nurse practitioner, obviously I also do some prescribing and some prescription drugs, and I get to talk about that tonight and about one specific that I actually utilize a lot. So I guess I'm just super excited. I'm singing. I'm giving you my credentials. Giving you my street cred.
Oh, geez.
But who are you?
Just plain old Wendy Boerhauer, CHHC. So I do have one comma.
Comma, my best friend.
Comma,
my podcast bestie. So, all right. So now that if we've really confused the listeners, I think we should probably tell them what we're talking about today. So,
okay.
Why don't you start off by talking about the article that we'll be discussing going from there?
I am. So IFL Science, which, I flipping love science.com. They always have some really interesting, if not debatable topics or very good conversation starters, I have to say, because I like to read down at the bottom and I like to see people, get incensed about what people are talking about. But today's article is licensed diabetes drug could dramatically increase human lifespan. And they're actually talking about a drug that's really becoming more and more popular with everybody, even mainstream people, which is metformin.
Yes. So metformin, it's also known as glucophage. So it's actually been used for over 40 years. And it's starting to become probably, I would say, I don't actually know the statistic, which if I was a good researcher for our podcast, I'd look it up. But I do think it's probably the number one oral diabetic drug that's out there. But there's a lot of other indications for it now. So it's grown in use in the last couple of years. And we'll talk about some of the ways that it's used now clinically and some of the ways that they're now starting new research, which you'll talk about with the article that's very interesting about where they're going with how everybody might benefit from this drug. So Why don't you continue on, my dear friend Wendy?
Okay, so what I found was really interesting is that the Food and Drug Administration is going to start allowing a trial to take place next year at this time, and they're going to recruit 3,000 people between in their 70s and in their 80s who are either have or are at risk for major diseases, and they're going to do the trial for about 5 to 7 years. And what they're trying to do is a trial called Targeting Aging with Metformin. And they're going to try and see if metformin really can expand your life and expand your lifespan and make you healthier.
So will you repeat what you said? They're doing it to target just that part again, just because I think there was a lot of information in there. So the research is based on what?
They're going to plan to recruit 3,000 people in their 70s and 80s who either have or are at risk of having major diseases. It's going to take 5 to 7 years, and it's called Targeting Aging with Metformin, TAME.
So, and I think it's interesting. So now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of metformin and how it works, and then talk about how we can all benefit, even if we're not on metformin, from what we're learning about metformin, because it's actually the mechanism of action of metformin that has such a importance on cell longevity, cell energy utilization, fat distribution, and fat loss. And so I think when we really look at the drug metformin, we can learn a lot about how we can take that information and realize what is important for longevity overall. So, one of the things about pharmaceuticals is we're trying to sort of rewire, I guess, chemistry through pharmaceuticals. And there's always a reason, there's definitely a time and place for pharmaceuticals. But if we look at metformin, we can learn a lot of lessons from it too. So I want to just geek out for a second, and then we'll go back to all this fun stuff. But I want to explain to people what metformin does. So most people have heard about it as a diabetic drug because that's by far how it is utilized the most.
Type 2 diabetes only, though. You cannot use it on type 1.
Great interception of information right there. So, because the reason why is because when we look at diabetes, and I'm going to start at a very easy level and I'm going to build up so everybody can sort of stay with me, okay?
Good.
Because this is very important. And I think that this study, and I think that what they're doing with metformin is amazing. And so I really want people to understand this, because even if you're thinking to yourself, I'm not a type 2 diabetic, I don't have a family history of it, I'm not worried about it, metformin's mechanism of action is for everybody. So everybody will benefit from staying with this podcast, listening to this podcast, and geeking out with us.
Okay.
So,
geek out, Megan.
So listen up, my podcasties. So how metformin works is it actually works at the cell receptor site for insulin sensitivity. Now, if you remember, because I know there's listeners of all different levels of understanding how the body works. Where does insulin come from, Wendy? You're right, the pancreas. I realized you were not ready for a pop quiz.
Thank you.
She went from looking to wanting to file her nails to you just pop quizzed me. So I'm going to throw you an alley-oop /bone on that one.
I'm going on vacation. I got to take care of the nails, okay? I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay. So we release something called insulin in the pancreas. And what insulin does is it goes to each cell receptor and it tells that cell, okay, if you need energy, let's take blood sugar, push it into the cell to make energy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what insulin does is it's a regulator, and it mainly regulates blood sugar.
Right.
And it does this because it tries to, and it wants to push that blood sugar into the cell when we need to make energy. Now, a lot of us are going around, and this is type 2 diabetics, pre-diabetics, and even some people who just have metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance, where they're still not using insulin to the best of its ability. Their cells have become desensitized or just not listening anymore to insulin.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, exactly. So it's exactly like this situation, that if after a while there's been so much insulin and there's been so much blood sugar, you zone it out. And that's what the cells start to do to insulin. They start to zone it out. They start to say, you know what, this is the same story day in and day out, and I can't listen to this anymore. I'm just not, going to listen. And so they become totally tuned out and zoned out to what insulin is trying to say, which is let's utilize energy effectively. So what happens then is that we then get into what we call an insulin resistance, where our cells become resistant to insulin and therefore don't utilize blood sugar correctly. Does that all make sense? Because it's very important.
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay. So, and if podcasters, if you're not with me, stop and go and rewind that, because that's a very important concept to grasp. And there's so many parts of health that this is very important with. Insulin is not just about blood sugar. It's about energy. It's about aging. It's about oxygenation of the cells, tumor growth, even reproductive organs. Because if you start to, not utilize blood sugar properly, then what happens is women start to push it towards testosterone and androgens, male hormones. So this is not just the cell, this is the whole body. Thyroid starts to become involved. The part of the brain that controls all the hormones, the hypothalamus pituitary, all of this then starts to play a role. So I want to show you the grand picture of all this, because it's not just blood sugar, it's everything and how it's regulated in the body and the cells.
Okay.
So, what metformin or glucophage does is it does not cause you to release more insulin. You know, if you're a diabetic and you're injecting insulin, you're actually just increasing your insulin to increase that action at the cell. That is not what metformin or glucophage does. It helps with insulin sensitivity so that your cells become receptive to insulin again. It sort of, goes in and puts that megaphone again on insulin so your cells start listening again. When your cells start to listen to insulin and blood sugar, sugar regulation, and insulin are all working together, do you know what happens then, Wendy?
That you start using your insulin better?
You start using your insulin better. You start using your energy pathways inside your cell better, and you start to live in harmony. So doesn't everybody want to live in harmony?
Heck yes.
So what happens then, and so this affects because obviously every cell in your body utilizes blood sugar and sugar for energy. So this affects, brain health. It affects your liver. It affects all your hormones and endocrine system. It affects your muscles and your fat cells. And that's why we see people that go on metformin and glucophage will actually lose weight because their bodies will become to better utilize energy. And so that's where then we started to notice and started to use metformin for a lot of other indications besides just type 2 diabetes. Probably the most common one now that we also see it with is polycystic ovary syndrome.
Yes, I read that, and I was kind of surprised to see that came up.
Yes. So polycystic ovary syndrome is a very common, 10% of all reproductive women go through PCOS or polycystic ovary syndrome. And metformin has been used for a long time to help with the insulin resistant part of that because it's insulin resistance that actually leads to hormone imbalance, cysts on the ovaries, and metabolic syndrome. The other benefits is it can help with cholesterol levels. It can help to have the body utilize fat better. There's just a gamut of things that metformin can do. So now they're looking at it as a way to increase longevity because of the powerful effect it has on letting the cell use the insulin properly. And the major side effect of metformin, patients that are on metformin, is GI distress.
Right.
So when they start out, it can interfere with the GI, give you an upset stomach. So we usually start patients on a very low dose and build them up.
Which is about how much per day for the dosage to start out
We
with?
usually start with 500 milligrams.
Okay.
And we can get them up to 500 milligrams 4 times a day, so about 2,000 milligrams. Some people we just get up to 500 milligrams twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. Or for some of the really either larger people or very insulin resistant people, we'll get them up to 2,000.
Okay.
But we go slowly, and that's just because of the GI distress on the gut. You also don't want to use this with people with liver or kidney problems. That's the other contraindication. But for the most part, what we have noticed with this drug is that when we put somebody, especially like a type 2 diabetic patient on it, we start to see improvements in a lot of other areas. And we start to see a lot of what we can call side benefits, which are the opposite of side effects.
I like side benefits. That's good.
So side benefits, because when your body, and this is where, the reason why this is very interesting and fascinating, and I just totally geek out about subjects like this, is because this is using chemistry and pharmaceuticals, but it's using it in a very preventative way. Like we're now looking at this as, possibly a preventative drug, but it also tells us the power and the benefit of blood sugar regulation and insulin regulation throughout life. So this also talks about the importance of lifestyle, eating foods that are, low in sugar and not causing a dysregulation of sugar every day, because the more you dysregulate sugar and the more that you stress out insulin in your life, the more then that you're going to age your cells faster.
So I have a couple of questions before you get into more explanation. They're now saying that this may be the miracle drug that can help humans live into their 120s. Now, a couple of things that I question on that. So last year they did a study of more than 180,000 people, and they showed that diabetes patients being treated with metformin lived longer than other diabetic patients, but they lived longer than the healthy control sample. I have issue with that in the fact that they said last year they did a study. So, they haven't really given it a significant amount of time to really show a true study per se, a 5 to 7, a generational, it's a year. So when
I will say though, just because we don't know the study, sometimes the study could be longer than a year, but it was published last year.
okay.
So that is sometimes that when they use the language, a study from last year, it might have just been published last year.
Okay. All right.
And
let that one slide.
honestly, I do know that with metformin, there's a lot of research behind it because it's been around for 40 years,
Yeah.
which is unheard of for a drug. I think that's the other reason why it's gained so much popularity. And honestly, to tell you the truth, for a drug that's been around for 40 years, for them to do research like this is sort of unprecedented. Because what the other thing too is the longer drugs are around, usually the cheaper they are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hear about this all the time. Like we just heard about that gentleman who increased drastically the price of a new drug,
Right.
because he has a patent on it.
Yeah, because it used to be $1 and now he's making it like $500 a pill or whatever it was.
Right.
Right.
So one of the reasons, honestly, in the pharmaceutical world that we have a lot of turnaround is I think there's two reasons we see a lot of turnaround in drugs, and we don't see drugs on the market for that long. Is A, because the longer they're around, the more we find actually the negatives of them, because people, that then are on them for 10 or 11, 12, 15, 20 years, we start to see the negative effects of that wasn't researched before because, we obviously don't do research for 20 years before we put patients on a drug.
Right.
And second of all, there's not that much money in older drugs. The money is in newer drugs, in newer discoveries, in patents, and those kind of things. And so those are the ones that the drug companies really like to push because that's where they make more of their money.
Yep.
So for new research to come out on a drug that's 40 years old and that's been on the market for 40 years old, I think that goes to show the power of insulin control and insulin sensitivity and what they're noticing that they can even utilize it for more now. So, because that's also unprecedented. I mean, I can't even think of another drug that has been around for a while and now they're saying, well, it's also, they don't say, oh, this heart drug is now also could be used for, I don't know, Alzheimer's. Usually a drug is very specific in its pathway.
Right.
And because it's very specific in its pathway, it's very specific to what it treats. And so that just goes to show you, though, the power of insulin and blood sugar in total health. I hope people are grasping that concept because
you're going to have to say that a couple of more times for me before we're done here. So,
and I will tell people too, I'm still fascinated by how much, if you control blood sugar and you control insulin, you control your health. You control your hormones, you control your thyroid, you control your brain health, you control everything. Your sleeping, your energy. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. So, two more things. So they say tests on animals have also pointed out that the drug expands their lifespans and it keeps their whole body healthier. So if the effects are the same in humans that they are on animals, then we could be looking at something completely revolutionary when it comes to a whole body type of pill that gives us, so essentially it better oxygenates us as well, right? So it just allows our body to work better and more efficiently and bring in more health.
So really the way that I sort of explain it to patients is that I say, if you think about the inside of a room as your cell, and that's where we want activity in your body to occur. We want cellular activity because we want to promote, the cells to be in action because the cells are what do the job.
Right.
So whether we want it to be a liver cell, whether we want it to be a brain cell, whether we want it to be a digestive cell, a stomach cell, we want the activity to occur in that cell or that room because that's what carries whatever activity we want. What happens with insulin is that it doesn't actually go in and do anything, but what it does is it opens up a door so that blood sugar can go into that room or into the cell. Mm-hmm. Once we get blood sugar into the cell, out of the blood, so it's no longer blood sugar, but it's cellular sugar, we've changed the game. Because sugar, and now this does not necessarily mean even sugar you eat, because we can release sugar when we need to from our liver and our muscles. So, but once we get that into the cell, then all of a sudden we have that backbone, that worker backbone. So we can start to produce ATP or energy. We can start to, make a lot of other things happen, protein synthesis, whatever we want to happen in that cell can start to happen when there's the proper energy. And the fuel for that energy is sugar. But that sugar is not going to happen unless insulin's there to open the door. So when we're in insulin resistance and our body's not listening to insulin, the sugar is knocking, but the insulin isn't opening the door to allow it in.
Okay.
So
I like that explanation much better, actually.
But if you think about it on this level, then it makes a whole lot of sense. So what glucophage does is it helps to make that door open easier so that, once again, that door is listening to insulin so that blood sugar regulation and blood sugar use is more thorough, more effective, and it leans towards pushing the blood sugar then into the cell where we want it.
Okay.
The other reason why, when Katie Loiter came on a while ago, I don't know if you remember, but she had said that research had shown there's one way to increase longevity in all animals and all lifespans, and it was to eat less calories.
Right.
So enough calories to survive, but less calories because of what we call oxidative stress. So anytime we eat or anytime we don't use our blood sugar properly or anytime that we're not utilizing energy properly, we produce more free radicals or oxidative stress that then need antioxidants and those kind of things. This is the same thing when we have high levels of insulin in our body that aren't doing its job, when we have high levels of blood sugar, we release a lot more free radicals. We release a lot more oxidative stress, and we actually break down our body. So it's a twofold improvement then. Not only then when we're utilizing insulin properly, are we pushing the blood sugar into the cell or into the room so that it can do its job, but we're also decreasing the amount of breakdown and cell breakdown because of the fact that we have this extra insulin and blood sugar that just goes around and causes damage.
Okay. Now, so if I'm me, I'm hanging out.
Wendy B,
chilling. Can I just go to my doctor and ask them to give me metformin? I mean, so what are the protocols in something like that?
Right now, no. So it seems like, honestly, if these studies in 2016 show to be, have good outcomes, then it's a possibility. They might become similar to a statin drug. Okay. And they might become similar to a statin drug in the fact that now, most people could show up at their doctor and say, I'd like to go on a statin to lower my cholesterol. And I don't think a lot of doctors would say no. But right now, you would have to show either, or most likely, a high blood sugar, high fasting blood sugar, high insulin level, or PCOS or some other indication that would better utilize the metformin. But because, remember, metformin or glucophage does not release insulin. It doesn't increase secretion. So we're not putting people at risk then of low blood sugars. Like if we gave you too much insulin, if we injected too much insulin into you, I could get your blood sugar, down to the teens and even the zeros because I've given you higher insulin. Glucophage and metformin don't do that because of the fact that they're not secreting more insulin. They're just telling your body to utilize insulin better. So they're increasing insulin sensitivity. So because of this, that might be that in the future we have a drug now that we could put, a large amount of people on for prevention. Okay. So we might see it go that way. It's possible we could even, this would be a pretty big thing if we ever saw this, but it's possible we could even start to see metformin over the counter.
Wow, that'd be amazing.
We've seen that a couple times. Obviously, if they find that the side effects are not life-threatening, it might become like a Tylenol or ibuprofen, or even like Miralax is another one that has gone from prescription to over-the-counter. So it's possible. We'll have to see where it goes, but right. It is possible that maybe they would go that way.
So I have a friend on Facebook who is a leading scientist in the study of telomeres and telomerase and anti-aging and how to reverse the aging process. And he just posted about half an hour ago, 45 minutes ago, about metformin and
What?
how he said it's truly a miracle drug. And, I think that this study is really going to open up the doors for us to maybe make a huge dent in this. His goal in life, he said, is to reverse aging or die trying. So,
Yeah.
he said metformin is like, it's the stuff, and so he's really happy to see that they are doing this study, and he really thinks that it'll make a huge difference and that people will be able to live longer and healthier.
And it is really interesting because, I mean, obviously, like I said, with my nurse practitioner and my holistic approach, that I do tend, I mean, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I tend to lean towards holistic more than some pharmaceuticals or whatnot. But I do, obviously prescribe some medications to my patients. And one of the things, though, is that I actually use metformin a fair amount. And I've seen amazing results.
Yeah.
And yes, there is the GI side effects and it does tear up the gut a little bit. But besides that, I mean, I've had some people who've been on it for years and years, and I don't see where, there are the side effects. And honestly, too, if a lot of this comes out, I've researched it a lot and I can't find, where the huge negatives are over long term. If someone's listening now and knows research at any time during any of our podcasts, if we say something and you guys know more, that's one of the reasons why we love this community. Send it to us at info@btbha.com. This is, a way for us to educate and reach out to you guys, but we don't know everything. So, and we're on a global mission to learn everything.
Absolutely.
So as lifelong learners, if anybody has information about negative effects or the other side of the conversation, please share it with us. But I really do think that what metformin is and the fact that it's been around for 40 years, the fact that how it works, its mechanism of action, all of the positive effects that we know about it, it's shown to suppress tumors. It's known to, regulate insulin, improve liver function, hormones, all of the things that we've already listed. I really do think that it's very fascinating, and I'm interested to see where the FDA goes moving forward with something like this to look for the benefits of it long-term and possibly preventable.
Yeah,
as prevention.
And so this coupled with eating well, I just think is really going to be life-changing for so many people.
Definitely. And I also think this also speaks to a lot of other things that we've talked about. So it's not just that I get excited about this because of metformin itself. I get excited about this because of where we're going with our thought process as a whole. This shows you the importance of blood sugar regulation and how now we're saying, yes, I think that right now our medicine really is trying to, is more geared towards, is there a drug or is there a pill? But if you look at the mechanism of action, and that's why I wanted to take the time to really explain it, is because we can take this information right now and live longer. You don't have to wait for metformin to prove to you the importance of blood sugar regulation and the importance of, insulin control. You can start today, take out the white stuff, take out the sugars, take out the pastas, take out those kind of things. You're going to feel better. You're going to think better. You're going to, move better. You're going to be less achy. Regulate your insulin and your blood sugar through your diet and exercise and lifestyle. And that will have the same positive effects of not putting so much oxidative stress and stress itself on your cells. So, this information, like I said to people, this isn't just for people who are type 2 diabetic or people who just want to know more about metformin. What we're learning about metformin really can benefit anyone. And it also goes back to the fact that fat is not our foe, sugar is our foe.
Yeah. Tell that to my donut friends.
I'd love to get into a room with your donut friends.
They tell me all the time, Wendy, we're so good for you. We just love you. And it's so hard to just turn them away. It's hard to keep the door closed with them, Megan.
Yes, if you want to hurt your cells and if you want to cause oxidative stress for your cells, and if you want to die earlier, that's fine, Wendy. That's
my choice, right?
That's your choice.
Yeah, whatever.
And I'm not going to judge you.
No judgment. No judgment.
I'm going to miss you, but I'm not going to judge you.
Okay, thank you. I have enough people judging me, so no worries.
No, I won't judge you.
Okay,
good. Like I said, just miss you.
Yes.
So, and because you did bring up telomeres or, that whole aging, because we did a whole podcast on that. But the other thing too is that, what they're looking for now is that is the end part of the chromosomes and the chromosomes and the chromatids. And what they're saying is that over time, if we start to break up those and we start to, degrade those, then that's what leads to aging. Mm-hmm. So, and one of the things that can degrade that very quickly is increased sugar, increased oxidative stress, increased blood sugar, those kind of things. Because blood sugar isn't just bad because it's hanging out in the blood and not getting into the cell, but it also, then really sugarifies your blood, which then leads to a bunch of other concerns.
Sugarifies? Is that a word? Sugarifies?
Sure is. Okay.
Just own
2016
sure
is the year that metformin and the FDA will do research on that, and 2016 is the year that Webster will start to recognize the word sugarify. So,
sugar, super sugar. All right.
Yes. So, yes. Keep your sweetness. I don't know what I was going to say. I was going to say something totally silly, so I'll just stop now.
Just stop yourself.
I'll stop while I'm ahead.
Just keep twirling your hair like you're 12.
Yes. Do you have anything else to add?
You have new glasses on.
Oh, well, I don't think our podcast listeners can see my glasses.
But I can.
Yes. I did switch up my glasses for the day, so I just wanted a different look.
All right. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're the only person that commented, so.
Well, that's because I'm the only one who really, truly looks at you, Meaghan. I don't look through you. I look at you.
I don't know whether to say thank you or be very sad about that, but I'll take the compliment.
Take it and run. Take it and
yes.
run. So, yes, I do have something. I have be kind to others, take care of yourself, and make good choices.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.
Have a good day.